When he found his twins asleep on the maid's chest by the pool, he didn't pause. He exploded. What he didn't know, Manda, was that moment would cost him more than his pride. It was just another Monday in Westfield, Georgia, the kind of neighborhood where security gates buzz every 5 minutes and pool water stays filtered year-round, where appearances are everything, and silence often hides the deepest grief. Inside the Maddox estate, 15,000 square feet of modern glass and unspoken history, the staff moved like shadows, always working, always careful, especially Naomi Ellis, the new maid no one had really noticed, until now. Naomi moved through the halls with quiet hands and heavy thoughts. She kept her voice soft around the twins, barely a whisper above the hum of the air conditioning. They were barely 3 months old, boy and girl, soft and fragile, the way her own son had once been, before the fever took him at 18 months. No one here knew that part of her story. They only saw her uniform, and maybe that was safer. Grayson Maddox, the billionaire who built his fortune in tech logistics, wasn't supposed to be home yet. His flight from Houston landed 2 hours early, and he didn't bother to text ahead. That's how he operated, efficient, unpredictable, emotionally precise. Since his wife died giving birth to the twins, Grayson buried himself in systems, routines, cold structures. Feelings but had no place in his empire. And love? That had died with her. When Grayson's black SUV rolled through the security gate that afternoon, the estate was unusually quiet. No noise, no crying, no staff visible, only the distant sound of pool jets. He stepped out, loosened his tie and walked toward the patio, curious, and then he stopped, dead in his tracks. There, lying on the outdoor lounge chair, was Naomi, fast asleep. The twins, his twins, were curled up on her chest, their heads rising and falling with her breath. His blood turned to fire. What the hell is this? She was sleeping? With his babies? Outside? Unattended? Every alarm in his brain went off at once. He stormed forward, rage sharp and immediate, heart pounding from the jolt of it. But before he shouted, something in him stumbled. Because for just a second, the sight wasn't wrong. It was soft. It was peaceful. They looked safe, like they belonged there, like they'd chosen her, and that terrified him. Grayson's voice hit the air like a whip. Naomi! She jerked awake, her arms instinctively wrapping tighter around the babies. The sun was still warm on her skin. The pool's gentle ripple hummed in the background. But the peace was gone. Grayson stood a few feet away, jaw clenched, eyes sharp with disbelief. His fists were curled like he didn't know what to do with them. Naomi blinked fast, trying to find her words. Sir, I didn't mean to fall asleep. I was just... She looked down at the babies, still sleeping, still peaceful. Then back at him. I was rocking them, and I guess I just... Do you understand how dangerous this is? His voice cracked like thunder. Out here, in the open, by the pool, and sleeping. Her heart pounded, not just from fear, but humiliation. She stood up slowly, careful not to wake the twins, and placed them back in their stroller. I'm sorry, she said softly. It wasn't planned. But her apology didn't land. He wasn't listening. He was still staring, and not at her face, but at her chest, where his children had just been sleeping. Something in his eyes flickered. Anger, yes, but also confusion, and something like grief, something he didn't want her to see. And then, You're not their mother, Naomi. Just 6 words. But they hit like a slap. She swallowed hard. I know that, sir. Then act like it. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Naomi nodded once, picked up the stroller's handle, and turned back toward the house. But behind them, Grayson stayed frozen. His heart thudded in his chest like it wanted to break something. He hadn't meant to sound that cruel, but he had. And the worst part? He didn't even know why. And just like that, something beautiful broke before it ever had the chance to begin. If you've ever felt misunderstood, or like someone judged you too quickly, maybe this story already speaks to you. If it does, don't just watch. Subscribe. so you don't miss what happens when people choose love over pride. Inside the house, Naomi slipped into the nursery. Her hands still trembled as she laid the twins in their crib. She brushed the hair back from the little girl's forehead and blinked away tears before they could fall. Outside, Grayson poured himself a drink he didn't want and stared at the pool like it had just pulled something from the bottom of his soul, something he thought he buried with his wife. Grayson didn't bring it up the next day, or the one after that. He left early, came back late, avoided the nursery altogether. When he passed Naomi in the hallway, he barely nodded, like the words he'd thrown at her had never happened. But Naomi hadn't forgotten. She'd gone home that night and sat in the dark, fully dressed, arms wrapped around herself like armor. What hurt wasn't the shouting. She'd worked in houses like his before. She knew how the rich could boil over. No, what broke her was the moment before the shouting. When she opened her eyes and saw the way the twins were sleeping on her, the way they curled into her like she was home, and how, just for that one fragile moment, it felt like maybe she was. The next morning she arrived early, quiet as ever. No makeup, no expression. She kept her eyes down and her movements efficient. Bottles prepped, diapers changed, laundry folded, toys organized by color, then size. Perfection became her mask. Grayson noticed. He always noticed more than he admitted. He watched her move around the nursery like a machine, no humming this time, no soft talking to the babies. Just silence, just duty. It shouldn't have bothered him, but it did. At dinner, he finally spoke. The twins seem different, quieter. Naomi didn't look up from the bottle she was preparing. Maybe they miss their mother, she said flatly. It was a dagger wrapped in politeness, and he felt it. He leaned against the kitchen island, glass of bourbon in hand. For a moment, he considered apologizing. Just 2 words. That's all it would take. I'm sorry. But pride is a heavy thing, especially when it's built from grief. So instead, he said nothing. And that silence said everything. That night, Grayson stood outside the nursery door for almost 5 minutes, just stood there listening. He could hear Naomi softly singing again, finally, and the twins gurgling in response. He closed his eyes and left before she knew he was there. Funny how we push away the very thing we need most. Ever been there? Trying to act normal while something inside you quietly breaks? The next morning, Naomi found a small note taped to the twins' door. Thanks for staying late. Your care is appreciated. Typed, cold, signed, G. Maddox. She stared at it for a long moment, then folded it neatly and tucked it into her back pocket. It started with a phone call. Grayson's sitter for the twins, the one who usually took over when Naomi clocked out, had a family emergency. Just like that, the evening coverage vanished. He considered cancelling his dinner meeting, but then he heard the twins crying upstairs, and he realized he didn't know which bottle was which. He wasn't helpless, he was just disconnected. He looked at the clock, then picked up his phone. Naomi was already walking to the bus stop when it rang. She almost didn't answer, but something made her stop, look back at the estate and press the green button. Grayson didn't waste time. I need you to stay. I'll pay double. There was a pause on her end. Then, it's not about the money. Another pause. Then softer. I'll be there in 5 minutes. And so began the nights. One evening turned into 3, then 5. Naomi stayed longer, arrived earlier, helped with late-night feedings, laughed once, just once, when Grayson accidentally put a diaper on backwards and looked like a deer in headlights. It shocked them both. One night, the twins wouldn't stop crying. Grayson paced like a caged animal. I've tried everything, he muttered. Naomi gently reached for the baby girl, rocking her slowly. She pressed the infant's cheek to her shoulder, humming low. The room filled with calm. Grayson watched, exhausted and awed. How do you do that? She looked at him. You stop trying to fix them. You just let them feel safe. The words hit him harder than he expected. The next day, he asked her to ride with them to a pediatric appointment, then to a meeting across town, then to a brunch event at his sister's home. It wasn't about trust anymore, it was comfort. Naomi didn't miss the shift. She felt it in the way he stood closer, the way his voice softened around her. But she didn't trust it. Not yet. People like him didn't fall for people like her, not without consequence. That night, after the twins were asleep, Naomi passed by his office. The door was open. He was asleep at his desk, a photo of his late wife in one hand, a baby monitor in the other. She stepped inside, gently took the monitor, and covered him with a blanket. He didn't stir, but a small exhale escaped his lips, as if his body finally trusted someone to watch over him. It was late. The twins were asleep. The rain outside tapped gently against the windows, soft enough to lull the house into stillness. Naomi moved through the hallway, organizing what the night nanny usually handled: bottles, baby clothes, a fresh stack of diapers. She turned the corner near the office and saw the door cracked open. Inside, Grayson was on the floor. Not passed out, not drunk, just sitting, back against the wall, elbows on his knees, a shoebox in front of him. He looked up when she entered, startled, but didn't move. "Sorry," she said quickly. "Didn't mean to." "You ever keep things that hurt to look at?" he asked, voice low. She paused. "Yes." He turned the box toward her. Inside, baby shoes, a hospital bracelet, a crumpled letter with soft creases. "My wife's things," he said. He handed her the letter. Hesitant but not stopping himself, Naomi read silently. It was written 2 days before delivery. In it, his wife talked about how scared she was, how much she loved him, and at the end, how if something ever happened, she hoped he'd let love back in, even if it didn't look the way he imagined it would. Naomi swallowed hard. "She sounds beautiful." Grayson nodded. "She was, and I was too busy building empires to see it." Naomi sat down on the floor beside him, slowly, unsure if she belonged there. "You're not the only one who lost someone," she whispered. He turned toward her, brow furrowed. She pulled something from her pocket. It was old, worn, a baby sock, yellow with a little stitched elephant. "My son," she said softly, 18 months old, 1 fever, 1 bad hospital. He was gone before I could even say goodbye." Silence fell like a blanket, but it wasn't empty. It was full of memories, guilt, things unsaid, and a strange, unexpected peace. Two people who had never really looked at each other were finally seeing everything. Grayson exhaled deeply. "How do you live after that?" Naomi looked up at him. "You don't. Not the way you used to. But sometimes, life gives you someone else to carry, and that helps you keep walking." She didn't say it, but they both felt it. The twins were keeping them both alive. Grayson reached down, gently picked up the baby sock, and handed it back with both hands, a quiet gesture of respect. Naomi smiled, tears quietly clinging to her lashes. "We all carry something, don't we? Some kind of pain we don't talk about. And yet in moments like this it finds its way out. Sometimes it's the only way hearts begin to heal." Neither of them moved. There was nothing romantic in the air, but there was something stronger, understanding. It started with laughter. Real, unexpected, belly-deep Grayson had just finished fumbling through a messy attempt to change both twins at once. Powder spilled everywhere, the wipes got stuck, and the boy managed to pee mid-change. Naomi stood at the door, hand over her mouth. But she couldn't hold it in. She laughed. And for the first time since his wife died, Grayson laughed too. Not the polite business lunch kind, real laughter. Tired, honest, human. Later that night, they sat on the patio after putting the twins to sleep. There was no agenda, no tension. Just two people who had both lost and were starting to find something new. The air was warm. The pool lights shimmered. A soft breeze carried the smell of baby lotion and jasmine. "You know," Naomi said, holding a glass of juice, "I used to dream about having a backyard like this." Grayson looked at her. "Now you live in one." She smiled faintly. "I don't live here, Grayson." He was quiet for a moment. "You could." The words hung between them, heavier than they should have been. She turned away, sipping slowly. "People like me don't end up in houses like this. Not as anything other than what I am." He didn't argue, because he knew she was right, and yet everything in him wanted that not to be true. Inside the house, a faint cry came through the baby monitor. Naomi stood to go, but Grayson touched her arm gently. "I'll go." She blinked, surprised. "You sure?" "Yeah, I think I want to try." A few minutes later he returned, a tiny smile on his face. "She fell asleep in my arms." Naomi grinned. "She trusts you." Grayson looked down at his hands. "I'm not sure I trust myself." Naomi's voice softened. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to show up." And in that moment, he realized she wasn't just talking about parenting. Later, as Naomi gathered her things to leave, the twins stirred again. The little boy murmured a word. "Mama." Grayson froze. Naomi did too. She knelt down, brushing his cheek. "No, baby. Mama's not here." But the word echoed, heavy, tender, and neither of them corrected it again. That night, Grayson watched Naomi walk out the front door, and for the first time, he wanted her to come back for him, not just the children, but he didn't say it. Not yet. The invitations went out a week in advance. Grayson's sister, Caroline, was hosting a charity brunch at her estate, a carefully curated crowd of Westfield's elite. Grayson agreed to show face, bring the twins, and look like the picture-perfect grieving billionaire, rebuilding his life. He asked Naomi to come, not as help, he added, just to be there. Naomi hesitated. She'd never been invited to stand beside a man like him, not as a nanny, not as a date, just as a presence. She said yes. That morning she wore a pale blue dress, simple, clean. It brought out the warm tones in her skin. She didn't try to be flashy, she just looked like herself. Grayson stared longer than he should have when she walked in, and said nothing. The event started smooth. Waiters moved like dancers. Music floated through the air. Grayson held one twin, Naomi held the other. For the first time, it felt almost like a family. Until it didn't. She was near the mimosa table when it happened. A woman, well-dressed, overdosed on diamonds and entitlement, leaned in, smiling too tightly. "Oh, aren't you the nanny?" Naomi forced a polite nod. "Yes, I help with the children." The woman's smile sharpened. "And yet here you are, at a table, not in the kitchen. Bold of you." Another woman nearby laughed quietly. Naomi flushed, her fingers clenched around her glass. She glanced toward Grayson, just a few feet away. He heard it. She knew he heard it. But he didn't say a word. He just turned back toward the conversation, like it hadn't happened at all. Naomi placed her glass down, walked slowly to the stroller, picked up her things, and left. Grayson didn't notice until Caroline leaned in and said, "Where'd your friend go?" He turned and saw the stroller empty, the diaper bag gone. His chest tightened, and for the first time in weeks, he panicked. Naomi walked home, didn't take the bus, didn't cry. She just kept replaying the woman's words and Grayson's silence, not the insult, the betrayal. Because silence is a choice too. That night, the twins wouldn't sleep. Grayson tried everything, but they weren't crying from hunger or discomfort. They were crying from absence. Sometimes the deepest heartbreak doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people you thought saw you, the ones you thought would stand up for you, and chose not to. In a dim nursery, Grayson sat on the floor, head in his hands, and for the first time he realized he'd failed them all. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that lingers even after the crying stops. Grayson sat in the nursery, rocking slowly in the chair Naomi once used. One twin slept on his chest, the other stirred in the crib, looking around with small, searching eyes. like she was still expecting Naomi to walk through the door. But she wouldn't, because he let her walk away. Grayson reached into the bookshelf drawer and pulled out the letter again, the one from his wife. He unfolded it with tired hands, read it slowly, like it was the first time. Let love back in, even if it doesn't look the way we imagined. He closed his eyes, and finally, let himself admit it. He missed Naomi, her quiet strength, her fierce tenderness, her voice in the house. Her presence, not as help, not as a replacement, but as something real. Across town, Naomi packed in silence. She hadn't cried, not yet, but there was an ache in her chest that felt like something familiar. Loss. This one wasn't sudden or tragic. It was slow, preventable, and that's what made it worse. A knock at the door broke the silence. Soft, hesitant. She opened it slowly, and there he was, Grayson. No suit, no driver, no ego, just a man. Tired, holding a baby sock in one hand, her son's sock, the one she left behind in the nursery. He looked at her like someone who had run out of excuses, and just stood there. Naomi stared at him, waiting. He opened his mouth, but no words came, because how do you apologize for not standing up, for making someone feel invisible when they were the only person who ever really saw you? Finally, he said, I was wrong. Naomi said nothing. He stepped forward. I let them humiliate you. I stood there and I said nothing, and I'm sorry. I was scared of what it meant, to need you. Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. She asked one question. Why now? He looked down at the baby sock in his hand, then back at her. Because I couldn't rock my own daughter to sleep without thinking about how you used to hum to her, because I couldn't hear her cry without wishing you'd come back, because this house is just walls without you in it. Naomi didn't move, didn't answer. Not yet, but she stepped aside and let him in. The next morning the twins woke before the sun. Grayson was already up, so was Naomi. She hadn't unpacked. She hadn't said she was staying, but she hadn't left, and that was enough. In the soft light of dawn, Naomi walked into the nursery without knocking, the way she used to. The twins squealed the moment they saw her. Grayson watched them crawl toward her, one clumsily bumping into the crib, the other going straight for her lap. Naomi held them both, eyes closed. Like home. Grayson stood quietly at the door, watching everything he almost lost. Later that afternoon, he asked her to join him outside. Same place, same chair, same poolside. But this time, everything was different. The twins lay beside her, napping peacefully. She was awake. Grayson sat across from her. No tie, no armor, just a man. This is where it started, he said quietly. Naomi smiled faintly. This is where it almost ended. He nodded. I know. A pause. Then he stood, walked over, sat beside her. I thought I lost you, he said. You did. She looked at him. Really looked. Now. I'm choosing whether or not to come back. Grayson nodded again. Respectfully, no pressure, just hope. Naomi reached into her purse and pulled out something small, the baby sock. She placed it in his palm. If I come back, it's not just as the help, it's not for the paycheck, it's not to raise someone else's kids. Grayson looked at her, heart pounding. Then what is it for? She looked down at the twins, then back at him. To finish a love story that never got its ending. Tears welled in his eyes. Then let me write it with you. The twins stirred beside them. This time, when the little boy murmured, Mama. No one corrected him. Inside the house, the staff whispered. Outside the gates, rumors spun, but in that moment none of it mattered. Because healing had a home now, and love, the real kind, had found its way in, unexpected, unapologetic, undeniable. Do you believe true love can survive, even after being tested this hard? Let us know in the comments. And if this story touched something in you, don't just scroll, subscribe, because we tell stories that remind you, Even broken people can find something whole.